Well, good evening and welcome to France 24's Africa Cup of Nations Roundup show. I'm Emily Boyle, and joining me in the studio to discuss today's AFCON action are football experts Tando Sibia and Karim Balde. Welcome to you both. It was the final matches of the second round of group stage games today, and teams were hoping to confirm their qualifications early, and not least Algeria in Group E, who were up against Burkina Faso. Well, let's cross over now to France 24's own Selina Sykes, who was at that game in Rabat. Selina, Algeria got their ticket to the knockouts in front of hundreds of their fans. What was the atmosphere like in that stadium this evening?
A very jubilant atmosphere, Emily, as Algeria fans celebrate early qualification for the knockout stages after Algeria beat Burkina Faso 1-0 earlier today in Rabat. Not an emphatic win, it has to be said, and not obviously many goals for fans to enjoy. Just that one goal coming from the penalty that Riyad Mahrez coolly converted in the 23rd minute to put the Algerians ahead. Algeria should have probably scored a second one. They had a few chances, but just failing to get it over the line, and getting that killer finish to get the second goal. They were a lot more threatening than their opponents for the vast majority of the match. In fact, Burkina Faso got their first shot on target in the 82nd minute. They then did have a burst of energy towards the end as they pressed for that equaliser, but they didn't manage to get that and were denied a few times by the Algerian goalkeeper, Luka Zidane. So that's the job done for Algeria. 3 more points in the bag, which is 6 in total, which guarantees them the top spot in Group E, and more importantly for the fans, it's banished the demons of the last 2 AFCONs for the Fennec when they have crashed out at the group stages in the last 2 editions. Perhaps a famous French face is their lucky charm this time round, because Zinedine Zidane, the French footballing great, has been in the stands for both of those games, obviously to support his son Luka Zidane, who is the goalkeeper for Algeria.
And Burkina Faso, though, are not yet qualified. Their next game is against Sudan, of course. Is the pressure on for them?
Yeah, the pressure's a little bit on them, it has to be said, Emily. The maybe benefit for them is that the other team in that group, Equatorial Guinea, has been eliminated now, so that gives them a bit more wiggle room, shall we say, to get one of those best third place team places in the worst case scenario for them. A bit of pressure on for them in that final game. They have 3 points after having won their opener. A draw would be enough to see them through. They'll be facing Sudan, who got a 1-0 win over Equatorial Guinea today thanks to an own goal. So Burkina Faso ahead of Sudan on a goal difference, both of those teams on 3 points apiece, and obviously they'll be both going into that crunch game for them both in Casablanca. Obviously both rearing to get that second place in Group E. It would be a disappointment for Burkina Faso if they didn't manage to secure the win against Sudan.
Well, thank you, Selina. We'll be coming back to you a little bit later on in the show, but for now, let's come back to my studio and my experts here. What did you make of that Algeria-Burkina Faso game? It was quite a fun one to watch.
Yeah, definitely. That was interesting because in this match day 2, we see better oppositions, and Algeria versus Burkina Faso, it was the same as what happened in Bouaké, Ivory Coast, when both teams played against each other, and it was a draw 2-2, and that was almost the beginning of the end for Algeria, because we saw that they were struggling even to score against Burkina Faso 2 years ago. But now we can see that they have a strong defense. Selena talked about Luka Zidane, obviously the goalkeeper, because there is his father. We all know his father. But I want to focus on their defense with Mendy, Aissa Mendy, Rami Ben Sebaini. Both were there when Algeria won the AFCON back in 2019. That's very important. And with Rainait Nouri and Ajam, we see that even if Burkina Faso's offense wasn't so good, but they can keep their clean sheet very easily tonight, and it's mainly thanks to their defense tonight.
We also saw quite a few players come off injured. Are injuries starting to become an issue in this AFCON?
Yeah, I definitely think so. And it speaks to the Mali coach's point that he made in a press conference, I think it was yesterday or 2 days ago, saying that the 6-day preparation that they had for the African Cup of Nations, specifically with the players being released from their clubs, from an active season as well, it's not enough for conditioning and for recovery. And so we're starting to see this factor in, bearing in mind that there was traveling, change in weather conditions, slippery turf, and then also with some players like Shargi, who's coming in with an injury. He came into the African Cup of Nations already with an injury, seeing him walk off during the game and even substituted eventually. And that's when you even saw Coach Vladimir Petkovic making a few changes and adding a little bit more of defense. When we saw Maris coming off during that game, he didn't look very pleased with being sent off.
Yeah, it was very early, minute 60 of the game, which is quite early for a captain.
Exactly, and that's exact. And if you look at the game, that was when Shargi came off, and so you could see that defensively they had to reorganize that 3-5-2 formation to get a little bit of reinforcement in the back structure, which then speaks to what Karim is saying, that the defense was a little bit stronger towards the end of the second half, because had it not been that solidified, I do think that Burkina Faso would have scored a goal.
Well, Selina touched on Algeria's keeper, Luka Zidane, but what about Burkina Faso's keeper, Hervé Kofi? He put in such a good performance.
Yeah, such a good performance, and thanks to him, there was only a 1-0 scoreline at the end, but Hervé Kofi, we used to see him making very crucial saves. He has such a great season in France with Angers, helping them from being a lower tier team of the French League One to one of the best defense in French League One. So yeah, Hervé Kofi is very important for Burkina Faso. Despite there were some waves from Algeria, he can make important saves at crucial moments of the game. So kudos for him, and very difficult saves sometimes. It was on his own from time to time in his game. His defense wasn't so good, but yeah, Hervé Kofi, really kudos to him, because he's going to be very important for that Burkina Faso side.
Okay, well, staying in Group E, Equatorial Guinea was up against Sudan. The first half quite chaotic. In the end, it was Saul Coco's own goal which gave Sudan the advantage. It stayed 1-0 until the final whistle, making it Sudan's first win at an AFCON since 2012. A brilliant win for a team that had to prepare the entire tournament abroad despite the brutal war happening at home. The team and its fans have shown remarkable resilience. Let's take a listen.
The situation in Sudan is incredibly difficult, but with the support of these fans we will prevail. Even as the war continues, we pray to God for an end to the conflict and for our team to lift the cup.
Sudan is enduring a time of war, and we are searching for a sense of joy. We need a victory from the national team today. God willing, that win is coming. We are all united behind the team and wish for the peace for the entire Sudanese nation.
Well, that win did come in the end today. What did you make of that performance, considering the prep that they had?
I like that you added that endpoint, considering the prep that they had. Had this been any other team with the favourable conditions for preparation, we would have said it was a little bit subpar. But considering the fact that they don't even have a training ground or home ground or even a camp, they performed really well. Is it going to be easy against Burkina Faso in the next game? I don't necessarily think so, especially because having an opponent, and I'm speaking about Burkina Faso, having an opponent like Algeria raising the stakes to then bring up the momentum to show you that you're actually capable of doing better, and then facing a Sudanese team, it's not going to be easy for them. But I do think that they've done quite well in the AFCON, but I don't think the round of 16 is going to be happening for them.
Yeah, and we have to notice that even if the situation is very bad in their country, the Sudanese football manages somehow to build themselves, because we have to take their two main clubs, among them Al Hilal Omdurman, and they played very well at the CAF Champions League. They won their first games, and in this team today, 5 of the starters play for Al Hilal Omdurman, and among them we can I don't want to notice about Abdelrazik Omer, who scored twice at the CAF Champions League in November and early December, and Mohamed Abdelrahman. I was quite surprised not to see him in the first game of Sudan in this AFCON, but he was in the starting lineup today, and so it shows that they have the quality, they have good players, they have good clubs, and both clubs can't play in the Sudanese League because there is no Sudanese League in the moment, but they played last season with the Mauritanian League, and for this season they will play in the League of Rwanda. So it means that they know how to figure out somehow to exist in terms of football.
Well, really impressive. So, we've touched on Group E. Let's have a look now at Group F. Gabon versus Mozambique turned out to be an absolutely brilliant game, at least quite fun to watch. The highlight reel might as well have been 90 minutes long. Mozambique's first goal came from a corner as Bangal's header bounced into the back of the net. The Mambas scored again 5 minutes later thanks to a converted penalty. Gabon's superstar Aubameyang managed to get one in for the Panthers right before half-time. Mozambique's third goal came in the 52nd minute. Gabon almost made the comeback, scoring their second in the 72nd, but the game ended at 3-2 for the Mambas, making it Mozambique's first ever AFCON win. What a crazy game that was. I don't know if you got to watch all of it, but it was absolutely brilliant. What did you make of that performance?
It was a massive disappointment from the Gabon point of view. Let's be honest, because before the game, I was sure that Gabon would be better than that. We talked in this show days before about their good FIFA World Cup qualifiers campaign, and to see what they did today, and especially in the first half, because they were led twice by 2 goals, and their defense was so poor. Bruno Ekolemanga, the captain, well, he's 35 or 37 years old, but we could see it today because it was like it was too quick for him, and he created the penalty in the first half, and then during the second half on the third goal, I was like, it was unbelievable to see a player of Mozambique alone into the box to put a header. This is impossible at that level of competition to have such a poor defense, and that costs a lot for Gabon because their third game is gonna be tough versus the best opponent of the group, which is Ivory Coast. So yeah, this is a very, very bad situation now for Gabon.
We have to look at some of the stats. 30 shots in total taken in that game, 15 on target. And then, we were talking about keepers earlier on. We have to mention again, Mozambique's keeper, 8 saves, Silma. He was just incredible.
And especially if you're facing a player as experienced as Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang,
yeah.
And considering the season that he's having right now at Marseille, I made a few notes to see a good pairing, and I've been looking for the example. Maybe it will come up later on in the tournament. But his pairing with Greenwood at Marseille is incredible, and so I just wish that they had the same composition for Gabon, and maybe there would have been a little bit more opportunities for this side. But it's very unfortunate. But shout outs to Mozambique, really another COSAFA region, doing what needs to be done in the tournament, which is surprising us. And we did speak about the unpredictability of the tournament, and so here it is.
Yes, another, as you were saying, big disappointment for Gabon. I think Mozambique are 24 places behind in the FIFA rankings. Just goes to show nothing is predictable in this competition.
Exactly, and that's their first win ever at the AFCON. It was the same for Benin yesterday, so congrats to them. And I'm sorry for my Gabonese friends, but yeah, it's going to be tough for them now.
But at least one thing to praise is, of course, Aubameyang's leadership. How crucial is he to that team?
He's very integral, I think. Again, I tend to use this expression quite often, but the big match temperament, which needs to be the composure in organizing the troops and also staying in the game, because it's very easy to get out of the game mentally and then fall all over the place, and that's when you're caught wanting by the opposition. And so for a player like that, as experienced, to just keep the composure and usher the troops, even better that he is up front. If he was in defensive, that would have also been a nice position to be leading. But actually on the pitch, it's okay from any position. So I do think he's quite integral in this tournament. But maybe they need a little bit more.
Yeah, because Aubameyang went back and forth. When we look at his journey with the national team, sometimes he was in, sometimes he was out. During the COVID, back at the AFCON in 2022, he went out for COVID reasons, but he went to a party at the same time, So that's why that kind of behavior wasn't so good at this moment. Now is fully involved into the project since Thierry Monuma took the lead of the bench of Gabon, but still there are other leaders as well, such as Didier Ndong and Mario Lemina, and they have to step up to be sure that other players can be there. And in this third group stage match, it's going to be very important because once again, Ivory Coast, and we'll talk about it like in a minute. Yeah, they're better than Gabon on the paper, so they have to do better.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about it now if you
Yeah,
like, Kareem.
okay, let's
Talk
go
about
for
it
it.
now. I mean, there were all the games this evening were pretty exciting,
Yeah.
but of course there was one very big game, of course, Ivory Coast against Cameroon. Was that the game of death from the group of death?
Yes.
Yeah, 100%.
Why? Why? Explain why.
I mean, did you watch the whole 90? Yeah, the first 45 perhaps not as much. But I think in the second half, you saw the knack that each side had for this game. And yeah, Kareem come and then we'll just do it like a back and forth because honestly, it was incredible football to watch. But I do think Ivorians kind of slacked in this game. Considering the changing of coaches, all the differences and changes that the Cameroonian sides has been facing, they had a little bit less organization. Coach MS5 has been with the side since the last African Cup of Nations, and so he's had a little bit more time to organize his troops. They seem like a more harmonious side in terms of the experience, 5 Premier League players. So when we're speaking about the style of play and whether we're together or even as opponents, I do think that the Ivorian side seems to have more synergy on paper, but today it didn't necessarily translate on the pitch.
Well, you were talking about coaches. The game obviously started with a tribute, a moment's silence to Frenchman Jean-Louis Gasset, who passed away on Friday. I mean, he was quite a symbol for the Elephants, right?
Yeah, it built the team that eventually won the AFCON at home in 2024. The thing is that he had to leave the team after the group stage because like the Elephants were on the verge of being eliminated, and he decided to sacrifice himself instead of staying there. And when he left the team, like the margin to be qualified was very, very narrow. And then there were all those results with Mozambique and then with the Morocco winning versus Zambia. And then they went up to the round of 16 and we all know the journey up to the final and to the trophy. So yeah, definitely this is that was a shock, the announcement of the death of Jean-Luc Gasset, because he was such a character in terms of humanly speaking, and he was always like, I remember him during the AFCON, obviously in Ivory Coast, but also in France, because he was a pundit for a French broadcaster no later than 2 weeks ago. That's why. And when we heard about his death, I was shocked to see that news. But yeah, definitely he's gonna miss to the French football, obviously, because he had spells with Montpellier, the PSG, Marseille, Saint-Etienne, and Bordeaux, main clubs in France. But to come back on the Elephants and on the AFCON with Côte d'Ivoire, yes, he definitely built the team, and then Emersfaye took the leadership next to bring the trophy to Ivory Coast.
And I think it speaks to the continuity of football. You're looking at the encyclopedia of football, as some journalists have affectionately referred to him as, and considering that Gasset's father was part of the founding fathers of Montpellier. And so you're speaking of the experience, the roots of football, and the handing over. And so now this speaks to the continuity that the Ivorian side has, because Coach MS5 wasn't just a random that was called, he was his assistant.
Yeah.
And so it was incredible to see the story of the information or the knowledge that could have been passed between the two. And it makes sense that they went on to win the tournament, because it was not just any random people. These are tacticians. These are very experienced people who are recognized as encyclopedias of football. And so definitely Ivory Coast were very gifted to have had Coach Gasset be with them and even usher them to winning the African Cup of Nations. So it really is a huge loss for football.
Well, looking back to the game now, actually, there were quite a few changes actually up front, especially for Ivory Coast, as Sebastian Haller was out with a hamstring injury. How did you think they were able to compensate for his absence?
Yeah, Issouf Bayo was on the starting 11 as a number 9. He wasn't so bad. But still, I think that they miss Sebastian Haller, obviously, but they also miss Nicolas Pepe. I stick to my position because they put Zah into the squad, and I don't want to repeat myself, but like Bayo wasn't so bad, but when Evan Guesson get into the pitch into the second half, I wasn't convinced. And that's why they weren't able to score a second goal, even if, in my opinion, Emersfaye's side was better than Cameroon. But Cameroon, like, they are brave, and as we say in French, impossible n'est pas Camer. Impossible is not from Cameroon. They always show it, and even despite all this turmoil, they can bring a strong spirit and they sacrifice themselves. Such, for example, Daniel Namaso is a forward. but sometimes he went on the defense to help his teammates. That's a short example of what players can do to help each other. And we see that in Cameroon since David Pegu arrived. He had only like 3 weeks to compose his team with many main players out of the squad. And the result is not so bad for the moment.
Okay. Well, that was a very quick look at the very exciting 4 games that we had today. Let's just go over those scores again. Of course, it was the Morocco. Sorry. Well, these are the group standings, but let's have a look at those. The group stage games last day start tomorrow, so let's have a look. Host Morocco, obviously first there. Comoros in last place in Group B. Egypt was one of the first teams to confirm their qualification to the next group stages. If we look at Group C and D, Nigeria is one of those other teams that is sure to be through. Things looking quite tricky though for Botswana at the bottom of Group D with 0 points. If we move on to Groups E and F, Algeria now also sure to be through to those knockout stages. Hopes not quite so high though for Equatorial Guinea and Gabon in the bottom of Groups E and F. Cameroon and Mozambique, though, still in with quite a good chance to get through. Of course, tomorrow is another action-packed day. If we look at the fixtures, we have Comoros against Mali and Zambia against hosts Morocco there in Group A, and then Group B, Angola against Egypt. Obviously, Egypt sure to be through, and Zimbabwe against South Africa. That will be all for the fixtures tomorrow. Well, Morocco, as I said, looking to be taking 3 points against Zambia and finishing top of their group. Our reporter Selina Sykes obviously is going to be there to watch that game. Selina, Morocco already have 4 points. They're expected to go through, as I said, but have they lived up to the very high expectations?
Yeah, like you said, Emily, 4 points realistically is enough to see Morocco through to the knockouts, and that they will want is to reassure that they get top of Group A, and to reassure their fans who were quite disappointed after that 1-1 draw against Mali. The Atlas Lions haven't hit their best form in their home competition yet. Obviously, that 2-0 win in the opener against Comoros, but that 1-1 draw against Mali in their second game. Mali obviously being their toughest competition up until now, failing to score in open play. Just that penalty from Brahim Diaz for that goal against Mali. Some people might say that the Atlas Lions till now are lacking a bit of bite and creativity in open play until now, and the pressure is obviously really on their shoulders in their home tournament. They came into it as the big favourites. I spoke to a fan earlier who was at the World Cup in 2022, obviously when they famously went to the last four, saying that he's pretty disappointed, pretty underwhelmed as of now, but obviously he's still hoping that his team can do better later on. And obviously, Emily, this is tournament football, and there's still 3 weeks to go. We obviously spoke about it, you guys spoke about it earlier on, Ivory Coast having that remarkable turnaround on home turf in the last edition. Still 3 weeks to go, and obviously teams that tend to win tournaments tend to hit their best form later on when it counts.
Well, otherwise, we also have Egypt that's already sure to be through in Group B, but all the other teams in that group are within reach of the knockouts. What can we expect from those games? As Selina, I don't know if you caught that, but we were just looking at Group B. Everyone could potentially get through there in that group, and I was wondering what we could expect from the action tomorrow. Okay, well, I think we might have lost Selena there, so I'll ask the question to my experts who actually no connection issues with you guys, I hope. So, yeah, as I was saying, we've got a Group B that looks pretty open. What are you guys thinking for tomorrow?
I personally
you can't do that,
Don't talk on the connection. We've lost signal. No, but actually, it's going to be quite intense. When I hear of Egypt, I just get bored a little bit. Not the country, but because of the game. South Africa were robbed in that last game because of the officiating. Everyone's a little bit on the fence about that. But South Africa need Egypt for tomorrow. The permutations are a little bit tight. So if there's a loss for Bafana Bafana and Angola win, Bafana Bafana's out. South Africa's done in the African Cup of Nations. No round of 16, dreams are crushed. If there's a loss for Bafana and Angola lose, there's a fight for the place in the 4 best third place. It's looking quite okay right now. I was looking at the points in the other groups. The third places are not that incredible, so South Africa can scrape it through if Angola lose. But if there's a drop for Bafana Bafana and Angola lose, then they're going through to the round of 16. So tomorrow is actually quite important, but they don't have the easiest opponents. They have Zimbabwe to face, and few days ago, I spoke about Knowledge Musona. I don't know if you watched him in the last game that he had. He scored the only goal that they got, but also just how important he is in the midfield. The guy is so experienced, and so he ushers the side. But Zimbabwe is not just using Knowledge Musona. They're quite a strong team. And so because these sides know each other, they play both in the South African Domestic League, and so in terms of the style that they play against each other, I think this is actually one of the sides that could be maybe the worst opponents for South Africa because they know them.
Kareem, any thoughts?
Yeah, a quick look at the other game, Angola versus Egypt, even if you're a little bit annoyed by the Pharaohs, but I understand why regarding what happened in the previous game. But yeah, Angola's luck is that Egypt is already qualified, so maybe they will put other players just to let the starters breathe a little bit. That can be the luck for Patrice Boeme's side tomorrow.
Okay, well, it's still all to play for, as I said, and I'm afraid that's all we've got time for. I'd like to thank my brilliant experts who do not freeze because of connection issues, Dando Sevilla and Kareem Balde. Also, thanks Selena Sykes, as well as all of the France 24 teams behind the scenes. The Africa Cup of Nations Roundup show will be back tomorrow, hosted by my colleague James Vicina. In the meantime, stay tuned for more news on France 24.